Now I'm pleased to welcome our first speaker of the day, somebody I've known not only for a long time, but somebody whose perspective and ability I deeply respect. Shailen Bhatt is the administrator of the Federal Highway Administration and a senior member of the U.S. Department of Transportation. He's responsible for administering more than $350 billion in funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law across 50 states and territories. It's important and timely work, and it goes to one of those policy questions I mentioned earlier. Is our driving and charging infrastructure prepared for the technologies and products that will make driving safer and our air cleaner? So let's find out. Please welcome Administrator Bhatt from the Federal Highway Administration.
Great to see John Bozzella. I appreciate that introduction. John, seeing you and the way you're dressed today reminds me of all the perks of going back into federal service. It's a huge pay cut. I get to wear a tie again. I don't get to be coolly comfortable like he does now. But we have known each other for a while. And it's amazing to be here at the Auto Tech Showcase. I grew up as a car kid, but I've been an evangelist for safety my entire career in transportation because when I was a kid, a really bad thing happened. I grew up in Ontario, and there was this terrible car crash just outside of town. There was a car, and one vehicle had 5 young men from the high school, and it hit this station wagon head on. You know, it was a 2-lane highway. They were overtaking, and all the occupants in both vehicles died. Now, I grew up in a town called Stratford, Ontario. Small town, about 25,000 people. So if 5 boys from a high school die, that's a terrible tragedy. Everybody knew somebody, and everybody was, the whole town was in mourning. But what terrified me as a young kid was in the other car was a couple that was coming home, and they had 3 kids, but they were not in the vehicle. And now those 3 kids were orphans. And as I think I was 6 or 7 years old, I was just terrified by this idea that my parents could do something that was pretty routine, which was get in the car and go, and never come home. And even telling that story now, like the hair on the back, it's the only hair I have, the hair on the back of my neck stands up a little bit because I just remember how visceral that was. So, to me, when I hear about an auto showcase, and there's some cool stuff out there. I mean, cars are so much cooler now. I'm a car guy. I actually just took my younger daughter to the Montreal Grand Prix this weekend because, I love vehicles and they're so amazing. But to me, it starts with safety. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I'm going to get to like a hopeful place, the New Hope. But I do think that we need to start with this idea that 41,000 people died on U.S. roads in 2023. Now, that is down from 43,000 a couple of years ago. But, we are stewards. So I am the Federal Highway Administrator. I'm the steward of a system that is killing over 40,000 Americans. And so what I would just say for everybody, we have a safe system approach, and hopefully we're starting to see us turn the needle, but it is going to take courageous deployment of our safe system approach and technology to actually get us to 0 deaths on American roadways. And we cannot wait decades. We cannot wait, all this time to hopefully maybe by 2050 we'll get there. This is a room full of talented people. This is an industry full of pioneers who just develop amazing things. If we all unite to combine all of our resources and all of our engineering capability, this problem is eminently solvable. And it is our moral imperative that we deploy all of our tools that are out there. So that's why I care so passionately about safety. I'm going to talk about some of these things when I think about the future and some of the priorities of the Biden administration. The automobile did a lot of great things in the 20th century. It also divided some communities. So we're trying to reconnect communities, and there's a way that we can do that. And part of the money in the bipartisan infrastructure law is going to do that. There's 2 things on here that are pretty close to my heart: freight and supply chains. And I'm going to talk about some of the autonomous trucking that is out there. And with electric charging, these are things when I was a Colorado DOT director, we actually did what I call the world's first commercial autonomous vehicle delivery, also known as the beer run, because the truck was carrying 50,000 pounds of beer, not even good beer, it was Budweiser, I know it's maybe controversial, but when you grow up in Canada, Budweiser is not the beer of choice. But we did that in 2016, and today in Texas and in Arizona and other places, there are autonomous trucks that are on the roadway. And again, from a safety perspective, from a supply chain issue, there's going to be some benefits with that. Electric charging in Colorado in 2016 or 2017, we tried to do inductive charging on the roadways. There weren't enough vehicles out there. Well, now in Michigan, they're doing inductive charging. We're putting a lot of chargers out there right now, but that is the next generation of charging that's going to be out there because, and I'll talk a little bit about electric vehicles in a second. And then AI. I mean, AI is everywhere these days. I did not use ChatGPT to formulate my remarks for this, but you should try it. It'll make you sound a lot smarter. But AI has the ability to transform our automotive and transportation systems. A lot of car companies are already using it. From the government perspective, how can we safely deploy it to get better outcomes? And then climate resilience. I deal with a lot of disasters that occur. Maybe you've heard about the bridge in Baltimore that came down. Well, we had a pretty bad disaster in Wyoming over the weekend where a road that's a pretty important road for one of our national parks washed out because of a slide. We're seeing fires, we're seeing floods. We need about $1.5 billion to fix the bridge in Baltimore. There's $2 billion in other needs across the country, mostly related to climate issues. And again, we spend billions of dollars a year on our transportation system. We need to make sure that we're making smart environmental decisions as we go forward. John and I were talking about an Audi deployment that is downstairs that is to prevent vehicles from hitting cyclists. This is Magnus White. I should be talking about Magnus White as a cyclist for the United States who is competing internationally. Instead, and maybe this one has stuck with me because I was the Colorado DOT director and he died on State Highway 119, but he was hit by a vehicle that came across the shoulder and struck him doing what he did. And he was a kid. I call him a kid. He was 17 years old. And I go out biking with my daughters all the time, and I'm always terrified. Is that vehicle approaching being driven by somebody who's drunk, drowsy, drugged, distracted, whatever the other, dumb, that's my fifth D that I like to put in there. And so, it's 41,000 deaths on American roadways, but this is not a number. This is a child who should still be out there and is not. And we have to recognize that as we move forward. So what are the tools that we can use? So V2X technology, I've been a huge proponent of it throughout my entire career, going back to when I was in Delaware and in Colorado. And I know the automakers have been, great partners along the way. We've had some fits and starts. John and I were talking about the journey that we've been on. But if you think about it, going back to when we were just talking about, DSRC or CV2X, now, it's not just about, dedicated communication, but there's also LTE, cellular, more broadly, 5G communications that are just really enabling all components. So we're not just talking about vehicles talking to vehicles or vehicles talking to infrastructure, but we're talking about all users of the systems. Very excited about our saving lives with connectivity, both our plan and our award announcements. Those of you who've worked at DOT know it takes a lot to get those out. I want to thank Brian Cronin for his leadership in this, and Dr. Robert Hampshire, who's just been a tremendous ally, but we're super excited. US DOT has provided $238 million to deploy V2X. We are ready. We have all kinds of partners. So I'm going to exhort the automakers to continue your leadership in this space. Automated vehicle integration. I think that this is something that I drive a very sexy Pacifica hybrid minivan. Does great things for my testosterone level. But the other thing that it has is that it has automatic emergency braking, right? And so whether it's autonomous vehicles that are out there or ADAS that is only getting better and better with each passing week, we've got to make sure that we're deploying autonomy at scale. And again, from a safety perspective, I am not interested in technology for the sake of technology. I'm interested in technology from the standpoint of, does it save lives, does it reduce congestion, and does it reduce greenhouse gas emissions? If it doesn't do one of those three things, it's a gadget, I'm not interested. If it does one of those three things, I'm hugely interested and we should deploy at scale. I'm not interested in pilots, I want to deploy at scale because that's the only way we're going to get stuff to go. Lots of opportunities out there for automated and self-driving vehicles. You've seen the transit shuttles. I mean, transit's going to face a real fiscal cliff starting next year, and finding new ways to deliver that very important service is going to be important. Autonomous trucking for last mile delivery, and then, our ports. I think Americans all became very aware of how critical our supply chain is. In my last job with ITS America, got to go around the world, and Laura's doing a great job under new management, doing much better things than I ever did. Got to go around to a lot of the ports around the world, and if you go to Singapore and Hamburg and some of these other places, just amazing levels of automation being deployed. And John touched on this. I mean, in the 20th century, lots of people came to America to buy our technology, to buy our goods. That doesn't just happen. It takes leadership and it takes courage to make sure that the world is going to come in the 21st century to buy the goods that we're making. And then generative AI and U.S. transportation. We always talk about the fatalities. We don't always talk about the injuries. There's lots of serious injury crashes are out there. We also don't talk enough about the near misses. And now we have so much data. When I started in transportation with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, we would get a crash report and it would say the accident occurred near mile marker 51 on I-65. Well, that could have been within a mile north or south on I-65 from a location standpoint. Now we're getting lat-long data. We've got telemetry data that's coming off the vehicles. There's this vast ocean of data. And one thing that AI and machine learning is really good at doing, it's processing large amounts of data and figuring out trends. We don't need to solve every crash, but we need to start figuring out what caused a fatality, what caused an injury, and what caused the near miss that we can replicate, or what is the data that we need. I also can't talk about technology and automation without talking about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity cannot be a feature or an add-on that we add on later in the process. It has to be foundational as we're beginning this process. Oops. So we need your help. Nearly 41,000 fatalities in 2023. All of you need to be at the table. And I'll just, I thought I wanted to check to see if there's one more slide. I do just want to talk about EVs for a second, because lots of people are talking about them these days. They become very politicized, and I'm not sure why. The only people who I talk to who don't politicize EVs these days are the governors of states where EVs are being manufactured here in the United States. So the governor of Alabama, hugely supportive of EV manufacturing in Alabama. The governor of Tennessee, the governor of Georgia, the governor of Michigan, the governor of Kansas, where they're building the batteries, for them to be built. And so I get that, in years like these, things tend to get, the temperature tends to go up. But, I remember speaking in Beijing, when a few years ago, and the person who spoke from another country at that forum that I was at had targeted the automotive industry and the EV manufacturing industry as key targets for them in the 21st century. So it is not a given that just because America won the 20th century and everybody came and bought our automobiles in the 20th century, that will just continue in the 21st century if we're not rolling out what the 21st century demands. And so what my collective plea to everybody is this is not a Democratic issue, it is not a Republican issue, it is good for America when people buy our automobiles. And in the world right now, there is a trend towards electric vehicles. And so our job is to get the charging network out there. With the Federal Highway Administration, we're seeing lots of states who are deploying at scale. There's a 90% increase in charging ports that are available. But we need to keep our eye on the ball of winning the 21st century and not winning partisan battles over the issue of electric vehicles, because it's not a partisan issue. Red states, blue states, purple states, everybody benefits when we manufacture and do well as a country. And so I'm going to close there. This is why I am so passionate about safety. These are my two daughters. And we often go out cycling. I have them in the car. I want to thank you for all of the safety stuff that you've already got in the vehicle, and I want to push you to get to the next level when it comes to making sure that we don't have 40,000 fatalities. I would love in my daughter's lifetime, if they are talking to each other, because they often make fun of me. They're getting the age where it's not daddy, 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 great joke, daddy. Now they like to make fun of me a little bit. I would love to get to the point where they're talking to each other about, Ren, daddy used to talk about wearing your seatbelt, and oh my God, you could die in a car crash. And I can't remember the last time there was a fatality on American roadways. We did it in aviation. We could do it in surface transportation. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over.